Yay! Hey, Charlie.
Hello.
I'm Kat. Pleased to meet you.
Indeed, likewise.
Thanks for agreeing to do a quick interview for us for screening at this year's Digital Burning Sea.
Woohoo!
Woohoo! So I know that your time is a little bit short, so we'll snap right into it.
Yeah, great. Thanks.
Can you introduce yourself, if you have a different art name, and your main art practice?
So my name's Charlie, and I have been an immersive, interactive, sensory live artist most of my adult life. So that's my practice.
Amazing. And you've been a burner for a while?
Yes, I went to my first burn at the Big Burn in 2011 with a 2-year-old. I don't recommend it.
I was at the same burn, Sans 2-year-old.
Yeah, well, don't do that.
Oh, that was a great year. And how many seeds have you been involved with?
I think I've been every year for the past 8 years. Yeah.
That's
fantastic. I have a personal sort of deal with myself that if I do a big project, then I take the next year off, and then do a big project and take the next year off, so that I actually get to have a more spacious year to be able to enjoy what everybody else is offering, because when I'm making projects, they tend to take up the whole of the festival. So in terms of me prepping for it, yeah.
Very sensible, a good work-life balance. So for people who aren't familiar with your work, what are some of the more recognizable things that seed participants might know?
So I think the two biggest projects I've done was, I can't even remember whether it was, I think it was 2013, was Body Banquets, which was 4 different food-based installations spread throughout the forest on a treasure hunt kind of principle, and they were naked bodies with food all over them. That's been my favourite to date. The other major one I did was, I think, 2 or 3 years ago, and it was the Astronautical Feast, and it was 7 different courses cooked over different versions of fire in the main paddock.
Wow, that's amazing. Was that 2018?
I'm not sure if it was 17 or 18. I can't remember.
They all blur together, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And then otherwise, I'm part of Camp Kraken, so I, do smaller scale things as part of the camp there.
Yeah, nice one. Are you one of the members of the submarine?
No, not really. I wouldn't call myself a sub main participant. I love the sub, but I didn't have much to do with that one.
And what's your art practice outside of burns?
I have had my own company called Round Angle for many years. And I also have done a lot of sustainability awareness education performance work through a company called Our Planet Enterprises. But the sensory work is the artistic practice that I find most interesting. And over the years, I've worked with all sorts of different communities in exploring how to apply the senses in performance context. Because I'm not really interested in the senses simply being an added bonus to normal sort of performance live experiences. I actually want the senses to be a language in and of themselves. And when I'm talking about the senses, I'm talking about the less dominant senses, so taste, touch, and smell, because often they're just sort of tacked on to support sight and sound. But I'm actually really curious about what those senses say to us in and of themselves. I've worked particularly closely with smell, and I've undertaken a smell technology research project as part of an arts innovation grant. I've worked with the deafblind community for many years because I naively thought that people who can neither see nor hear at the same time must have a very rich world of sensory perception. And little did I know that I had a lot to learn about working with people with dual sensory impairment. So that was a very long and rewarding project.
That's fascinating. Can you tell me a little bit more about what you unearthed and some of the things you learned working with the deaf-blind community?
To adapt is really quite phenomenal, but it's really interesting the way that they've adapted their communication systems. So they use tactile sign language. So where you see Auslan being used, they use Auslan, but they put their hands on the speaker. So it's a one-to-one communication medium. But they also have developed a new communication system called haptic communication, where the interpreter will sit beside them and use their back as like a palette, where they can give sensory signals about, for example, the layout of the room. So it's almost like they draw onto the back the floor plan of the place that they're situated in, and give signals for when people are laughing, or when and we used it particularly for trying to communicate with our deafblind artists around the feedback from people in the room, so laughter or comments, but also particularly working with the sound designers. One of the deafblind women was born hearing with a vision impairment, and then over time lost her hearing and her sight got worse. But when she was younger, she had learned to play the piano and was a very accomplished pianist. So the sound designers worked very closely with her to develop her as one of the key performing sound musicians in the show. So she played the piano, and in order to communicate with her, they would sit beside her and sort of develop their own language to describe the music that she was playing and how to improve her playing by, encouraging her to increase the volume or to slow the pacing down, or even just to give her a sense of the timing that the rest of the sound team were working with.
Amazing. Were you doing like a range of different art with the group that you were working with, or were you producing art for people with multi-sensory deprivations?
I think that was part of my naivety, was trying to create a piece of work that was accessible to all. But I don't, as idealistic as that is, I think after years of doing it, I think it's very impractical, because people have very different needs. But my motive was to try and create a space where people were able to access it regardless of their sensory capacities. So it was an immersive interactive space where people were blindfolded and barefoot and taken on adventures through space that kept changing. Everything was on wheels, and it was a very ambitious project that then launched a whole new phase of work for the people within that community.
Amazing. What was the feedback from the community?
I think deaf and deafblind people were really excited that finally somebody was creating work that was accessible to them. I ran into the challenge of being, as a fully hearing sensory abled person, it was challenging because I didn't fully understand the complexity of their needs. So that was an ongoing challenge to work through. So it was a huge learning curve for me. In terms of the response to the broader arts community, I won several awards for that. Yeah.
That's amazing. So you obviously have an amazing internal process that you go through to kind of get you into these situations. Can you tell me what makes you passionate about art?
I think the thing that's most exciting for me is about how to engage the audience. And I'm always putting myself in the position of the audience rather than coming at it from I have something to express or I have something to say. It's more, I'm curious about this idea, and if I'm going to create it, how can an audience best enter it or access it? For me, it's about a very active audience. And I think early on we developed the concept that the audience is the protagonist in their own adventure when they come to my work. So I will often just have a key theme that I'm exploring, but I don't want to dictate how people should perceive that, because we all come with our own life experience and interests and turn-ons and turn-offs and edges and boundaries, and so they will all influence the way that you interpret the worlds that we create. And I think the other part of it for me, which is why it's kind of bizarre that everything's turned online and I'm kind of resisting becoming an online artist, what has motivated me towards this art form is my resistance to everything becoming technologically mediated. I believe that we are at the core sensory humans. The way that we exist in the world is through our senses as our portals for perception, for connection, for interpreting, for for everything. And yet the more and more technologically mediated our lives become, the less embodied we are becoming.
Would you say it's almost like having sensory deprivation, accessing art through a screen?
I don't know. I don't think so. I just think it's a very limited portal when our bodies are capable of so much. And I know that, within the world of technology, people are developing haptic suits, and there's all sorts of technology to try and create more immersive and sensory environments, like the world of VR, etc., etc. But ultimately, they're still using the medium of technology. And I believe it's to the detriment of our capacities to really inhabit our bodies fully.
It sounds also like you want to draw people into the present. You want to draw people into the now, and technology can take you away from that, because you can have technological stuff-ups like, you can't quite hear me right now, and rather than having a chat face to face.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot that we miss, the subtlety of perception if we're just relating via a screen. And in terms of the question around being present and being in the now, of course we get sucked into the screen, and it takes all of our attention, but the rest of our bodies are just passive. Yes, I just really like to invite people to remember the potency of what it means to live through the body.
That is such a beautiful invitation, one that I think we're not being invited to do anywhere near as often as we used to.
Yeah, especially right now.
Where are you based? Are you based in Melbourne?
I'm in Melbourne, yeah.
Yeah, my condolences.
Yeah.
I've been sending care packages to my fellows in Melbourne. It's a tough time.
Yeah, it is. It is. Thank you for your compassion.
So grateful that I have the opportunity to interview some amazing artists and kind of get an insight into everyone's practice. Everyone is so different, the way they approach art and the way that what drives them. And it's interesting to see your starting process is by what is the audience experiencing. And it's a very unique way of tackling making art.
I mean, I start with a concept and then, thrash that out for a bit, but ultimately it is about the audience's experience of it.
Could you give us a little snippet, like a little insight into how an idea forms, and then how you shape it to get to a first draft stage?
So I work really collaboratively, so cherish and value the role of my fellow collaborators. They come through in very varied ways, but I will effectively be responding to something that I feel is missing or being overlooked or is invisible socially or culturally, then I try and imagine, well, I do a bit of research into the idea as well, and just sort of try and inform myself a little bit more about the concept and what's already out there. But often I will, the first point of call is, well, how would I try and describe that using just taste and touch and smell? And also I work very spatially. So, you know, the situation, how can that support or enrich that concept?
Yeah, right. So who's your main collaborators? Is it your family? Do you experiment on them? Or, you know, is there friends that you're like, hey, come over here, I want to eat sushi off you naked?
So I have worked a lot in the past with my ex-husband and father of child, who's also a fellow burner, Will Tate. He's been one of my primary collaborators over the years, and we have run a couple of theatre companies together. And then I work closely often with Jodie Newcomb of Carbon Arts, and we do a lot of projects around regenerative agriculture and native Australian food plants and how we can reimagine cultural identity in relation to food and agriculture. So there's a lot of sustainability processes that underlie a lot of the work as well. And then over the years, I have had teams of puppeteers and dramaturgs and sound artists, and yeah, all of the projects are really different depending on who the audience is, what the budget allows, often who's available and willing. One of the downsides of this art form is that it's very expensive to produce because it's very immersive and interactive. Every audience member requires a certain level of one-on-one engagement. So often audience numbers are quite small compared to cast and crew. So yes, I think that's what I really enjoyed about Body Banquets and Aeronautical Feast. What was it called? I can't even remember what it's called now. They were both experiments in me trying to create opportunities for bigger audiences with smaller crews. So I think we managed to get over 100 people through those experiences in the course of a few hours.
That's amazing. What's some of the most inspiring art for you? What do you get your energy from?
I'm definitely inspired by immersive participatory experiences, but not where I'm being forced to be in the limelight of it, but actually just in it and having my own experience of it. I remember being really blown away by an Argentinian company in London called De La Guarda, and the show was called Villa Villa, and they're a physical theatre company, and it was just this rush of experience. I've also seen some beautiful work come through Theatre Works as part of the one-on-one festival. I think the work where performers are really challenging the role of the audience in relation to the work, I find fascinating. And then I love large-scale spectacle kind of work, and work that's really willing to sort of push the boundaries of what's of taboo and what's okay, and
Finding the edges.
Yeah.
It sounds like you're quite inspired by nature as well.
Absolutely. I think I do a lot of outdoor work. Well, nature is an incredible stage for life. And I think there's an opportunity for everyone to have their own little moment of discovery and adventure by being more receptive to the world around you in every moment.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. been really lovely diving into your arts practice and learning more about you.
Thank you, Kat. I am going to have to go. I have an appointment.
No worries. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Have a great weekend. Bye.